Okay, we now have a quorum, so I would like to call this meeting to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Galgiani.
Here.
Valadeo. Here. Berryhill. Hill. Here. Ma. Mendoza. Olson. Here. Perea. Yamada.
Okay, we have a quorum. And we have Senator Yee here to present his bill, Senate Bill 249. And I would remind the committee that we are televised today. Thank you, Mr. Yee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. This is a pretty straightforward bill. What this bill will do is to require that 2 members be appointed by Mayor of Daly City and 2 members appointed by the Mayor of San Francisco on the Cow Palace Board. As you may or may not know, the Cow Palace has had some difficulty in one of the recent events, or of late. There were deaths and individuals sent to hospital. As you can imagine, it was a tremendous shock to the local jurisdiction of Daly City, and to try and provide, I think, a larger voice of Daly City into this particular board, and also to San Francisco, because the Cow Palace borders Daly City and San Francisco, that the thought was to provide a greater voice by having individuals from those jurisdictions appointed by the respective mayors to then provide some input as to what would be the appropriate accommodations made for the different venues that may occur. With that, I should also note that we are in communication with the governor. The governor does have some concerns about this particular bill. We're still trying to work it out. So the commitment I will make to you is that if this bill does get out and it gets amended, we will then request that it be turned to this committee for a final hearing before it goes to the floor for a vote.
Okay.
That urgent I vote.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any witnesses in support? Would you like to make your presentation?
Yes, Madam Chairman, Bill Duplessis on behalf of the City of Daly City. I'm here to support this effort. It's actually, for many of the committee members are not familiar perhaps with the long and glorious history of the Cow Palace and its relationship with Daly City, but it's not been a pleasant one. Daly City essentially suffers the impacts of the facility of the Cow Palace being an attractive venue for very costly events, costly in terms of emergency services, fire, police, etc. And when trouble does occur at the Cow Palace, although the county of San Mateo, as well as other cities in the surrounding area, oftentimes in peak situations of violence or arrests or something do take part, it is in fact the City of Daly City that must really bear the brunt of all of those extraneous services that are required because of some of the attractions and exhibitors that now use the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace was a wonderful facility and at one time hosted some wonderful events, but unfortunately it's fallen on very hard times, and the impacts of that unfortunately fall heavily upon the limited resources of the City of Daly City.
Okay, thank you. And please go ahead.
Yes, Steve Cruz representing the County of San Mateo. And just to clarify, we had submitted a letter of support early on this measure, and then most recently one to the consultant expressing support, but also based on our understanding of the current version of the bill that related to the composition of the board, we had expressed a desire to include somebody from the County of San Mateo, given the fact that the Cow Palace is located in the county, and we both enjoy the economic benefits from the events, but also have to dedicate community resources when things don't go right, particularly as there was at the rave that Senator Yee mentioned recently. So if in fact the bill moves forward and remains continues to deal with the composition of the board, we'd like the senator to hopefully consider our request that somebody from San Mateo also be included in those that would be come from the local governments within the community.
Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses in support? Do we have any witnesses in opposition to the bill? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions from the members? Assemblymember Hill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since the Cow Palace actually sits in San Mateo County, well, part of it does. Part of it is in the county of San Mateo, and the county has expressed a concern, especially the letter that was sent, the costs that I know Mr. Duplessis was referencing for the one event that occurred on the event in May of 2010. The costs incurred by the county are over $2 or $3 million that as a result of the intensive care costs that were unsupported, the emergency transport ICU costs of $1.5 million for those who had been affected and with the drug use that was going on there. So it's an expensive proposition for the San Mateo County, and that's, I believe, what the county's interest was in providing or having a representative from their county as part of the board that would oversee the Cow Palace. I think, and I'm willing, to support the bill to move it forward for the amendments that the senator, because Senator Yee is my senator, and we have enjoyed a good relationship, and he's always been considerate of the issues for San Mateo County, certainly. But the concern that I have is that if it goes forward and for some reason the governor decides that he likes this makeup that is in the bill that was just moved, the concern I have is then it would move forward in its current form. If it goes forward in its current form or goes forward in an amended form, I would like it to come back to the committee for review, because the current form wouldn't be satisfactory to certainly to the county that I represent, and I think Senator Yee recognizes that as well. So I don't know how that can be done in a way, but that's the only concern that I have, is if it maintains the same structure, then that would be problematic.
Madam Chair, if I can just comment
Yes,
on that.
please.
We've already gotten an indication from the governor that we're going to have to amend this bill. And my commitment to the chair and you all is that if, in fact, it is going to be amended, that we will, in fact, bring this bill back to this committee before it goes to the floor for a vote.
But if it moves forward by the vote today and is not amended?
And I've just indicated to you that this bill most likely will, in fact, be amended, because the governor has indicated that he has some concerns with the way in which it is drafted.
Well, I guess that, and that's just my little discomfort. I don't know how to resolve that. If it is amended, then I mean, if it's going to be amended, then that's fine. But if it's maybe or may not, my concern is that it moves forward in some way, and the governor changes his mind, or he's going to allow it, and there's no amendment to this bill. It will not come back to this committee, and its current structure is of problem to San Mateo County.
I doubt very seriously it's going to stay in its current form.
Madam Chair, can we just hold the bill there here till the next meeting so we can have time to amend it?
Senator, is that something you'd like to consider?
No, we've already indicated. I've already indicated that, number one, I think the governor is going to ask for some amendments. I've indicated that I'm not going to move this bill to the floor for a vote without coming back to this policy committee. And so, with that,
Madam Chair, can we just make a motion to let the bill get out, but then before it goes to the floor to make it come back to the committee?
We can consider that. Let's take some questions.
Yeah,
I noticed that Assemblymember Olson had a question. I'd like to hear questions from other members, and then we can talk about whether that's something we want to do. Assemblymember Olson?
Thank you, Chair. I had a question as to why the bill isn't more inclusive. It seems that if one district agricultural association, like at the Cow Palace, should have a city or perhaps a county appointment, that we should extend that same opportunity to all district agricultural associations, fair boards, et cetera, because I doubt there are any fairs in California that don't take resources from police departments or sheriff's departments. So have you considered expanding your bill to apply to all fair boards and district agricultural associations?
let me just say that that issue was in fact discussed on the Senate side, and the reality is that the Cow Palace is, in fact, a unique situation. There's no other venue in the county fair system that has had the problems that the Cow Palace has had. No other venue has had the history of not hospitalizations but death, and no other venue has had these ongoing problems. If there is another type of large venue, I can't tell you that I will guarantee that everyone who's going to go in there is going to be safe. That's the problem. And unfortunately, in these tight economic times, it is the money that is driving a lot of these facilities. And so if you cut out a lot of the overhead, you make a little bit more money. Unfortunately, when you cut those overhead, some individuals may end up dying. Mr. Duplessis?
Yes, Assembly Member, I just wanted to comment that, again, this is a very long historic issue with Daly City, and certainly, as Senator Yee said, the problems have reached a point of severity beyond, I think, any other of the agricultural districts. But we're not necessarily trying to designate a situation. I think the other, and I don't know this to be true, but I am imagining, since I've been around here for a while, I think other agricultural districts work well with their surrounding jurisdictions as a general rule. I'm sure there must be issues from time to time, but generally they work well with them. That has not been the case with the Cow Palace. And when they do need extra police services, for instance, they probably negotiate in good faith with the jurisdictions surrounding them, and build that into the price to the exhibitor, and so on and so forth. That is, again, not true with the history of the Cow Palace. The exhibitors are sign an agreement, pay the Cow Palace, and then someone picks up the phone and says, we need 911, we need 5 more police officers, we need police officers to guard the facility because one of our exhibitors knocked the door down and therefore it can't be open all night. Well, I don't want to bore you with this, but don't get me started on this. But it has really been a very particular issue between the City of Daly City and the Cow Palace that I've not known to be true with any other agricultural district.
Okay, Assemblymember Yamada?
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, Assemblymember Olson asked the sort of broader policy question that I was going to ask, which is, while I have a great appreciation and respect for the author and your work, that this raises, the specter of, why only this ag district and not others, and you just answered that in part. But it seems to me that the way the bill is written, that it is approaching the irregularities, if I may call them that, with the kinds of events that are being approved at this particular site, and the absence of some perhaps contractual stipulations in the contracts that are let with these organizations that are causing great duress and distress for local governments and inability to collect the amounts of, in the millions of dollars, as we just heard, of the results of the kinds of events. So I guess my question is, how do you really feel that by having a different format for the representation, that you'll have enough influence across the board in order to stop these kinds of events from being held at the Cow Palace? I believe I understand the problem you're trying to solve, but I'm not sure that simply changing the composition of a board is necessarily going to prevent, if I can just put it out there. I think these are raves that are going on that were the subject of another member of this committee's endeavors in the past.
No, one of the realities that we've got to face is that while I think local government would like to have absolute control over it, you just can't. These are state facilities, and therefore they are under the governance of the state government under the governor and under the Department of Food and Ag. And so what this bill does is at least provide a modest change where there is some voice, not absolute voice, but some voice. And hopefully having a voice at the table, not a majority voice, but a voice in the table, will at least spur that discussion about being a little bit more considerate of local government. You know, it's one thing for a state agency to want to make as much money as possible, but you cannot do that at the expense of local government because we end up having to clean up that mess. It is not state government. We can't take that whatever amount that is incurred by Daly City and San Francisco and the adjoining jurisdiction along with the county and send that bill to the governor. We end up having to eat that cost, and that's not cost that we can just easily bear on our shoulder time and time again. And what this bill do is a modest way of at least providing that voice.
Assemblymember Berryhill has a question, but before that, I know that Assemblywoman Fiona Ma had brought legislation before this committee some time ago that addressed a number of the concerns over the Cow Palace, and perhaps she would like to speak to the committee at this point. Or
yeah, so thank you. As the committee knows, I brought legislation to try to deal with essentially the rave situation, and we narrowed the bill to work with the fairs. We have about 37 fairgrounds in the state, and to get the boards to look at each event as they come up 30 days before, at least before the event happens, and to evaluate whether there's any threats to the community, and if there is, to require the promoter to prepare an event action plan that would incorporate all of the elements that Senator Yee has been talking about. Senator Yee and I both represent the Cow Palace, so this has been a continual problem, and he is correct. It is uniquely situated in between two counties. The property, a lot of times nobody knows which jurisdiction to call when there are emergency situations, 911, which hospital to send people to, and so it has been a particular concern to the communities. I know Senator Wright is here, and he is active with the LA Coliseum Board, and they have a similar type of government structure where there are appointments from different agencies so that there's better accountability for the type of events that are happening. So it's not just the state and the fair board, the executive director for that particular property, but now it is really a kind of local jurisdictional concern when there's an event happening. And so I am supporting Senator Yee's bill. I think there's going to be more accountability when there are appointees from different jurisdictions who are going to sit there versus just governmental appointees. And in the Cow Palace's case, there have been some folks that have been sitting as holdovers for 10 years because the prior governor did not even appoint appointees. And so I know this governor's is going to be more proactive in the fairgrounds, but that has been a huge concern as well.
Assemblymember Berryhill?
Yeah, no, this makes all the sense in the world, Senator. I guess I go back to Assemblymember Hill's point, though, is when you talk about the governor you're going to need to amend this a little bit. Are you referring to getting San Mateo? I mean, is that what the governor's looking for, a representative from San Mateo as well? Or what's the governor looking to amend into it?
I don't want to speak for the governor, but let me just say that, and I can understand that any appointing authority, anytime you take away, the ability of an appointing authority to make appointments, they look at that rather carefully. And so that's part of the discussion, further discussion that we're going to have with the governor's staff, and we will most likely have to amend this particular bill. But as I indicate, and as the chair's staff indicate, we need to do that in quick order.
Okay, good.
Do we have any other questions from members or comments? And I do see that we have some individuals standing either in support or opposition, so we'll call on you as well. Mr. Mendoza?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess when this bill does come back, some of the questions I think that were brought up. I think the more membership you have from different cities that are affected by this community, by this Cal Pilot, I think the better off you have. It's sort of like shared responsibility. But I think another issue that was brought up that I don't know if anybody's talked about yet, it was the fact that the people who are appointed on this particular board, are they coming from the actual city that they're supposed to be representing, or they could just be from anywhere in the state?
Anywhere in the state.
Well, I don't know. I think that might be of concern, because if you're someone from San Mateo wants to be on the board, San Mateo County, but yet doesn't really necessarily have to be from San Mateo. They could live in LA County and they could sit on this board, which is kind of the whole defeats the purpose of being on. Right? I don't know if that's a concern or not, but I think it needs to be brought up next when it comes back to address that, because if you have two people from San Francisco or one from Daly City, you would think that they actually live in those communities if they're going to be appointed from them. Am I right? Or
we have
that's something that needs to be addressed.
Yes,
the concern.
We have someone else who's here who I have a feeling wants to comment on that question or respond to that question, Mr. Brown.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Louis Brown on behalf of the Western Fairs Association, the trade association that represents all fairs in the state of California, including the Cow Palace. And for a number of years, we've had discussions with Senator Yee regarding one of our favorite fair facilities, and we have a neutral position on this bill at this point. There's a number of points that have been made. First of all, district ag associations, their boards are appointed by the governor. The individuals appointed to those boards must reside within the district. And one of the reasons we've taken a neutral position on this bill is because of the unique characteristics of the Cow Palace. And I don't want to talk about the events that they hold, but really the geography and what it represents. It's one of the only, if not the only, district ag associations that sits right in the middle of two counties in two cities. And to the point that Assemblymember Ma was making, it has created some tension, for a lack of better words, among the locals in that area. And so the idea of actually designating some seats where specific local representatives are guaranteed a position is something that we have not seen as a trade association as a bad thing. On a larger scale, we are in the process of talking with the Department of Food and Agriculture about district ag associations and how we move forward into the future. An element of that discussion will be governance, and whether or not district ag associations remain gubernatorial appointees. Do they go to a local governance structure? All of that is going to be discussed as we move forward into this new era of the fair industry in California without state general fund support. So we're working on the larger issue. At the same time, we've taken a neutral position on this bill primarily because of the unique circumstances that are in the San Francisco-San Mateo County area, and just thought I'd provide some of that input for the members of the committee.
Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses that are here in support or opposition?
Madam Chair, could I?
Okay. Assemblymember Hill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think the tension, just so it's clear, that Mr. Brown was talking about is not related to one city, one county, or another county. It's between the Cow Palace and kind of the community at large has been the tension that was established. And I appreciate the senators and Ms. Ma's legislation and effort to try and rein in some of the problems that have been created at the Cow Palace. And so as long as, just want to make sure I'm clear that this bill, when we vote for it today, is in its current form, and the commitment is that it will come back to us before it gets to the floor in whatever form it's in, whether it's amended or not amended. Can it come back to this committee? Because I'm reluctant to vote for it if it's not amended.
If
I mean, I can't vote for it.
I don't see what the rationale would be to bring it back. But if it's in fact amended, I've made a commitment to the chair and to all you members that I will in fact bring it back. With that said, it is very likely that it will be in fact amended.
I would like to remind the members that if it does come back to committee, we have to have approval for a special hearing. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, any other discussion, Assemblymember Mendoza?
There's a lot of unknowns in this bill. I don't know if we send it out the way it is. There's a lot of members that have here questions, Madam Chair. I think
unless there's some commitment or some guarantee that it would come back here before it goes forward. My concern is, if it passes today, it could move to the floor, be voted on in that form. I can't support that based on what the County of San Mateo has said in their concerns that they've raised related to it. That's my particular problem with it.
And you know, with all due respect to you, Assembly Member Hill, you're a colleague of mine. I don't want to put you in any difficult position. If this bill in its form, and assuming that it may not come back and you can't vote for it, then don't vote for it. You know, I mean, you're my colleague and I want the best for you.
And I would say that I'm not comfortable sending the bill out today, knowing it could be amended later. I'm not supporting the bill today in its current form, and I don't know that I would even support it in an amended form. But Mr. Mendoza, go ahead. Or Assemblyman Member Yamada.
Well, I was also going to make a similar comment, having, you know, about a 92% zoned agricultural district myself, that, you know, I have concerns about some of the precedent setting despite the uniqueness of the Cow Palace. And just in terms of process, you know, I don't even know if we'd have time, I guess, for a special hearing to hear an amended version of the bill in time for all the other deadlines. I mean, would we even have the time to do that with it going, you know, out, back, re-referred, back, and then it would need to go to approps as well. So I do have some concerns about just the overall policy discussion. I just have a sense that, so is it, as you said, I think Mr. Duplessis mentioned that it's really the money that is driving the problem. That is, that the income that is derived by the Cow Palace by allowing raves to go forward is really what's driving a lot of the problem, and that why would we not seek certain contractual requirements for any, you know, local costs, you know, when we accept certain events at some of our fairs, we require whoever is hosting the affair the event to have insurance and to post, you know, whatever $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and they have to be bonded and insured in order to have the event at the Yolo County Fairgrounds, for example. So again, I have a few concerns about the bill in its present form.
Let me share with you, Assembly Member, you know, how it works. Cow Palace is a state entity. They then receive various requests from promoters to set up these events. The city is not part of that negotiation. It is a state entity. It is above local jurisdiction. So the promoter, in his or her interest, is going to try and not pay as much as, you know, everybody would like. The Cow Palace entity clearly would like to make sure that they get some money rather than no money. And so they'll work with the promoter and try to get something that is reasonable, but not so much that at the end of the day, the promoter will walk away. So everybody has an interest in making sure that that event happens, except for the local government. The event happens, all hell breaks loose, someone dies, someone gets injured and so on, and guess what? Local government and county government is going to have to come in there and bail them out. And that's the reason why local government has no voice in it. It is not in the interest of the promoter or the Cow Palace to have extravagant or even reasonable police and fire and emergency services. And that's the reason why. And I think to your point, Madam Chair, no, you still have control of the bill. The agreement that I've made with you and to the members is that if it's going to be amended, most likely it's going to be amended, that we would bring this bill back for hearing. If we don't get the permission for that special hearing, then that bill is stuck. And so we're not going to move this bill unless we bring it back. And hopefully we will prevail upon the leadership of this House to somehow get that special hearing to occur. Absent that special hearing, then I still have an agreement with you that this bill will in fact come back to the policy. If it does not come back to policy, we will not have this bill on the floor and have it voted on. And that's my commitment to you.
We have a motion and a second already. It would take rescinding the motion. And again, I'm not supporting the bill in its current form or amended. So unless there's a great desire by the committee to rescind the motion, rescind the second, and have a new motion to look to amend the bill and have it come back to committee, we would stick with the current motion that's in. Okay.
The bill's non-fiscal, so it goes straight to the floor.
I'd like our consultant to please tell what the process would have to be.
The bill is non-fiscal, so if it leaves the committee, it goes straight to the floor. If there are substantive amendments on the floor, we could ask leadership for a 77.2 re-referral back to committee. And if it's past deadline, then we do not need to get the 54 vote waiver for hearing a bill past deadline. A motion to bring the bill back to committee is not a valid motion from our committee. That has to be from rules. The motion would be either to, or the actions that are available to the committee would either be to vote on the motion that's currently before the committee. The second option is to rescind the second and rescind the first, or the motion, and the bill will be held. If you take the first option and the motion fails, then the author can request reconsideration, and if there's not objection from the committee, reconsideration can be granted. And in that case, should amendments be dealt with, there's a possibility that we could request a special hearing the following week to hear the amended bill.
Okay, there you have it. So we have a motion and a second. Okay, call the question. Will the secretary please call the roll?
SB 249, the motion is do pass. Galgiani?
No.
Galgiani, no. Valadeo? Aye. Valadeo, aye. Bill Berryhill? Hill?
No.
Hill, no. Ma? Aye. Ma, aye. Mendoza? Olson? No. Olson, no. Perea? Yamada?
Okay, that bill is on call.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If, without objection, if the bill does not get the votes required, the author could ask for reconsideration? Okay. Okay, reconsideration granted. Okay, next we have Senator Wright here with Senate Bill 276, dealing again with expositions and fairs and the California Science Center. Mr. Wright?
Thank you. I hope this is not as complicated as the one that you just heard. Madam Chair, members, in the budget bill that we did last night, there was language in the bill that made specific reference to a park manager at Exposition Park. What this bill simply says is that should that budget be signed, that the authority to hire the peace officers at Exposition Park would be then made available to the executive director. I'll remind you that the park did not have a park manager for some 70 years. I actually wrote the bill that created the park manager. This bill does not eliminate the position. It simply allows the executive director, because there's a statutory prohibition from the executive director being able to hire peace officers. There is a post requirement to hire a peace officer. When we created the park manager, that post position was given to the park manager. This simply says that if the budget is followed and the park manager position is eliminated, then you would be able to continue the operation of the park, where the executive director would be restored the authority that he had for some 70 years.
Okay. Do you have any witnesses here in support of the bill?
You know, I've been at the park so long, I think I'll just serve as my own witness. I did write the bill that created the park manager. I did work on the budget aspect that saved the park's budget in this context. So this has kind of sort of been my park for some almost 40 years, Madam Chair. So I can't think of a better witness than myself to tell you the history of the park, where there have been the only park, for example, in the world, there have been 2 Olympic Games played. It is the home of the USC Trojan football team. It is where there have been more Heisman Trophy winners who've played. It is the largest science center west of the Mississippi River. It's the largest rose garden in the United States in an urban area. I could tell you more about the park than you want to hear, but today I would just simply ask for an aye vote so that we can continue to serve the 2 million young people who show up at that park, at the Science Center, and the African American Museum, and the Natural History Museum on an annual basis to see the exhibits there.
Well, your passion is clearly evident, and congratulations to you for all of your hard work to keep it going all this time. Do we have any other witnesses in support of the bill? Any witnesses in opposition? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second.
I have opposition. Almost made it now.
Madam Chair,
Please.
members of the committee, Ed Behrens on behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors in opposition to the bill. The board believes that there will be a diminution of the quality of services and security provided if, in fact, this bill is chaptered. I would note that the committee analysis itself states that the bill a decade ago that stripped the CSC executive director of the authority to appoint the security is going to now have that authority restored to that individual, and we would object to that. In the intervening 10 years, the park office, Expo Park Management, has functioned satisfactorily in providing security and maintenance. There is no need to restore the authority to the office that, according to a report, was not qualified to deal with that satisfactorily.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Andrew Antwi here today on behalf of the City of Los Angeles in opposition to the bill. I should start by just recognizing and acknowledging Senator Wright's long personal history in the park, from the time he was first elected to the legislature and his staff to Congresswoman Waters. There's a lot of history here. And there's a lot of deep-seated feeling about the park, and there are a lot of stakeholders involved in the park and the larger agricultural district. And there's genuine stakeholder interest in how that park is managed. There's been a viewpoint that, based on the changes that were implemented from an audit recommendation 10 years ago, the service has been improved. And so we're very concerned from the City of Los Angeles perspective that there'll be a diminution in service. We understand the realities of having to make changes due to the lack of available general fund resources to support the park, but having the manager restored to have these responsibilities is a concern of folks from the City of Los Angeles, just from a customer service perspective, from a coordination of service perspective with respect to these security personnel. So on that basis, the City Council has asked us to reflect our opposition to this bill.
And I have a question that I would like to ask of both of the witnesses in opposition. So this bill were to take effect if the exposition manager is no longer there. So what would be your proposed solution rather than this suggestion here through this bill?
The words right out of my mouth.
I don't know that we have a group suggestion. I know from the City of LA's perspective, we'd want time to have the stakeholders weigh in and maybe look at ways to come up with an alternate funding source to sustain the loss of general fund support actually these are special funds that are currently being made available. We understand this is a companion piece to the action in the Budget Act. What you're really seeing as reflected here by the opposition, not only from us but from other stakeholders around the park, is the desire to come up with more time to come up with an alternative.
Okay. Do we have any other witnesses in opposition? Assemblymember Ma?
I would just like to say, Senator Wright, when we were on public safety, he was his own sponsor and his own witness, and it's very impressive when he comes up with by himself and can explain everything himself. And I just want to say that I've had a great working relationship with Senator Wright, and I think he always is trying to do the right thing. And in this case, since he is very knowledgeable with this park and what's been happening in his district, I am going to vote with him. I think he really cares about what's happening at his facilities, especially what's happening in his district and in his community. So no respect to the advocates here, but it seems like it's a district issue, something that Senator Wright really cares about. So I'm voting aye.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members? Assemblymember Yamada?
Yes, if I may. Well, it's interesting that the first two bills here, it seems that, state legislative committee is being asked to sort of weigh in and navigate some very local and specific issues. And I actually started my political service for Los Angeles County Supervisor Ed Edelman. So I'm very familiar with the LA County Board of Supervisors. And I also went to USC, so I'm very familiar with Exposition Park. Yeah, right? Fight on. So I would just like to get some response, maybe from all three. Why do the city and county believe there would be a diminution of services if this were to occur? Wouldn't the management that's closest to the park want to ensure that whatever is going on there in terms of requirements for security and so forth would be, that's the person that's going to be most responsible. It's not going to be the chair of the Board of Supervisors necessarily, or the mayor that's going to get the phone call. It's going to be that park manager.
No, fully understood.
Yes.
Ma'am. But if in fact the entity that once had the authority to do the appointing and maintain park security facilities was stripped of that a decade ago, and things have functioned well subsequent to that time, and there's no indication that the post-2001 activities were mishandled at all by the Expo Park manager, there would be some question, naturally, as to the capabilities of the entity to assume responsibilities and execute them effectively if, in fact, they could not do that, according to a UCLA study a decade earlier.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yes.
My witness is factually challenged. The UCLA study that he makes reference to was actually done in legislation by me. I worked on the study and helped prepare the study. There was no stripping of the executive director's authority. What took place was when we created the position of the park manager, we did that because we considered that it would be a more universal system, since the executive director also ran the California Science Center. At the time, we were considering the installation of a school which didn't exist at the time. What now exists there that did not exist is a Los Angeles Unified School, elementary school. It wasn't there at the time. So what we did is, as we were adding additional stakeholders, in addition to adding another playground on another site, we considered that this might be a better way to go. The idea of eliminating the park manager wasn't born out of an idea that we did or didn't like the park manager. The stripping, as my colleague here refers, was not done because the executive director was not doing a good job. The reason that the bill is here is that We're talking about eliminating a position because of the budget. If you eliminate the position, then that means you can't hire any peace officers because no one would have the authority to do it. It's not a question of saying, do I like him or don't I like him? It's a question if there's no park manager and the budget says that he'll be gone, then there'll be no one there to hire police officers. The reason that the park manager position was selected as opposed to the others is that, again, since the executive director had successfully run the park management position for some 70 years, not the same executive director, but the two previous, Jeff Rudolph has been there for 26 years, and prior to him it was a guy named Don Muchmore. Since they had been doing it for 20 some odd years, and since the peace officers there are state police officers, by the way, their status was elevated by, again, Assemblyman Wright, to take them from being security guards to post-trained peace officers. So there is a police force that is there at the park. It was a bill by me that made them peace officers. When you have a post-police force in place, you have to have a post-authorized person to hire them. That position was Jeff Rudolph for a number of years, and what we did when we created the position is we also created the authority to go with it. If you eliminate the position, then that means there would be no one there authorized to hire and or supervise the post officers. It has nothing to do with Jeff being incompetent or saying that he got stripped. That's factually inaccurate. I was there. He wasn't. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well,
Assemblymember Yamada?
Well, let me just follow up by saying that that was a UCLA study. And no, I'm getting myself in trouble. But with that, I would actually like to move the bill.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Seeing no further questions. Okay.
And Ms. Yamada, it was a UCLA study, Ms. Yamada, because it's a state agency, and because we did it at UCLA and it was a state agency, we didn't have to send it out to bid. That was also a part of the legislation as well. So it was not an accident. But I assure you that in the study, USC was a full participant in what went on at the time.
Senator, shall we take that as your close?
I'll take that. Thank you much.
Thank you. Okay, will the Secretary please call the roll?
SB 276, the motion is due pass. Galgiani?
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valadeo? Aye. Valadeo, aye. Bill Berryhill? Bill Berryhill, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Ma? Ma, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. Olson? Aye. Olson, aye. Perea? Yamada? Aye. Yamada, aye.
Congratulations, your bill is out. Senator Cannella, Senate Bill 513, dealing with renderers and farmers markets.
Oh, we're going to do that one. Oh, can I switch them? Can I do SB 707 instead at this time?
Certainly.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. As you all know, California's $35 billion agricultural industry is the backbone of our economy. As one of our priorities in supporting this critical sector is to ensure our crops remain healthy and our farmers have access to the best quality plant stock. CDFA's Foundation Plant Service at UC Davis provides such services through maintaining stock of various major California crops like grapes, nuts, peaches, and apples. Due to the increase in the number of olive trees being planted over the last decade, SB 707 would add olives to the list of crops included in this program, would extend the 1% assessment on plants included in the program to olive trees, as well as including olives in SB 707 would also require a representative of the licensed olive nursery stock producers to sit on the fruit tree, nut tree, and grapevine improvement advisory board that oversees the program at UC Davis. Currently, there are nearly 25,000 acres of olives grown in the state for the purposes of making olive oil. Of this amount, 15,000 acres have been planted in just the last 5 years. However, one hurdle to expanding the crop is the presence of diseases. The funds required for participation in the program pay for the distribution of plant materials that are disease-free, virus-tested, and certified as true to type to nurseries across the state. The assessment is supported by the olive oil industry because nurseries recognize the value of maintaining the healthiest stock possible to ensure the future viability of oil olives in California agriculture. As oil olive planting continues to grow in California, it is important that our state invest in research to study these diseases and ultimately maintain a healthy stock of these crops. The amendments made to the bill in this House are only technical and were based on input from CDFA and committee staff. I have with me Tom Burchell, president of Burchell Nursery in Oakdale, to testify in support.
Thank you, Mr. Burchell. We have a motion and a second. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Tom Burchell. I'm the owner of Burchell Nursery in Oakdale. We are a commercial fruit nut tree nursery, and I'm here representing the other nurseries that are like us that grow fruit nut trees as well as olive trees in the state. For years, we have been charging a 1% assessment on fruit and nut trees, peaches, plums, nectarines, almonds, to go to a 1% assessment fund to fund research and to keep our stock in California some of the cleanest stock in the nation. And we're proud that the nurseries in this state distribute clean, true-to-type nursery stock for all those products. And it's been a pleasure of mine to sit on that committee for 6 years and decide where those funds are spent then, as well as other members. The researchers from UC Davis and other places come to us and say we need some funds to do research on diseases and pests that could affect the agriculture products here in California, and we use this 1% assessment to fund those research projects so that we can have the cleanest stock in the United States. Olives now has been a new crop added in California in the last 10 years. There's several of us nurseries that are propagating those stocks, and we need clean stock. We need to assure that this stock coming to these nurseries is clean, disease-free, virus-free. And so just adding olives to the 1% assessment, I've talked to a couple of olive growers, farmers, and they say a 1% on a $2 olive tree is 2 cents a tree. It's really negligible when that tree lasts for about 20 years in the orchard. So 2 cents a tree, I think that he was telling me that would be, that they could swallow that. So, and to ensure clean stocks. So that's why I'm here in support of the bill with other nurseries.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
I'm Dan Flynn, the Executive Director of the UC Davis Olive Center, and I'm just here to answer any technical questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Do we have any questions from members?
I just want to say it's nice to represent UC Davis.
Okay, will the Secretary please call the roll?
SB 707, the motion is due pass. Galgiani?
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valdeo? Aye. Valdeo, aye. Bilberry Hill? Aye. Bilberry Hill, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Ma? Aye. Ma, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. Olson? Aye. Olson, aye. Perea? Yamada? Yamada, aye.
Congratulations, your bill is out. And your next bill is Senate Bill 513, dealing with renders and farmers markets.
Yes, I would like to start by telling you that I will be taking the technical amendments suggested by this committee. SB 513 covers two different topics that are both very relevant to discussions in California Ag today. The first component of this bill would reenact a recently expired section of the Food and Ag Code that allows CDFA to collect an additional industry-supported fee from licensed vendors and collection centers to enforce existing rendering, licensing, and registration laws. It would also create the Rendering Industry Advisory Board to make recommendations to the CDFA Secretary on matters involving licensing and regulations. Rendering is an essential service that helps curb the spread of animal diseases and supports human health and food safety. One service provided by renderers is the collection of used kitchen grease from restaurants, which is used to make a variety of products. A costly problem facing the industry, however, is the theft of kitchen grease. One empty receptacle on a collection route is not a big deal, but when a whole route or street has empty receptacles, the involved plants lose valuable time and money in labor, fuel, and product costs. For this reason, the rendering industry supports CDFA's collection of fees to enforce existing rendering laws. Furthermore, by creating an advisory board, industry stakeholders will have another means of interacting with the Department on policies affecting rendering practices. The second part of SB 513 proposes to extend the sunset date on an assessment supporting CDFA's popular Certified Farmers Market program to January 1st, 2014. For many small-scale growers,
we have a motion on the bill. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Please continue.
Farmers markets are the only cost-effective means of selling their produce because they do not have the resources to manage the expenses associated with commercial sales. Every operator of one of these markets pays a nominal fee to CDFA for management of the Certified Farmers Market program, which funds state inspections to guarantee that vendors actually grow the produce they're selling. I'm going to skip to the end. In support, I have with me Dennis Albiani on behalf of the Pacific Coast Rendering Association and the California Grain and Feed Association, and Noel Kramers from the California Farm Bureau Federation to discuss certified farmers market.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support?
Good afternoon. Dennis Albiani with Pacific Coast Rendering Association and California Grain and Feed. The senator did an excellent job explaining the challenge, the theft issue, which increases as commodity prices go up, and so it's pretty rampant right now. And the industry supports this fee to be able to increase enforcement. Now, the other side of that is the rendering board. Rendering Advisory Board, a similar bill went through this committee last year, but was held for unrelated reasons and appropriations. So it's a makeup of a bill of 7 industry folks and public members as well. And that just increases the interaction of the industry with the agency, how these monies are spent, and how you direct the enforcement. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Noel Kramers with California Farm Bureau Federation. On the farmers market piece, we know that there's significant increase in demand from consumers for farmers markets, which provide a great opportunity for California farmers to sell directly to consumers. But as the markets grow, unfortunately, there are people who take advantage of that and act inappropriately. And we want to make sure that we design a program to get rid of that fraud in an appropriate manner. And we think that the sunset gives us that time and allows us to have those discussions with all the stakeholders to design the good program.
Do we have any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? We have a motion and a second on the bill, but first we have the amendments that the author has agreed to take, so without objection, we'll go ahead and adopt the amendments. Okay. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
SB 513, the motion is due pass as amended. Galgiani?
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valdeo? Valdeo, aye. Bill Berryhill? Bill Berryhill, aye. Hill?
Aye.
Hill, aye. Ma? Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Olson? Olson, aye. Perea? Yamada? Yamada, aye.
Assemblymember Perea, did you wish to add on to this bill?
Yes. Yes, aye. Perea, aye.
Okay, that bill is out. Congratulations, Mr. Cannella, 2 for 2. Senator Wolk. Senate Bill 818, dealing with food labeling and olive oil.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, 818 will update California's olive oil standards to match the new USDA standards. Olive oil is one of California's fastest growing agricultural products. In 2008, the University of California, Davis dedicated its new Olive Center for Research and Education. Studies by the Olive Center have shown that much of what we know of as extra virgin olive oil imported from other countries is inferior oil. Last fall, the USDA...
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Please proceed.
Last fall, the USDA created voluntary olive oil standards, the first revision since 1948. I've introduced this bill to incorporate the new federal standards into California statutes. Clear standards will give consumers confidence that they're getting the quality product that they're paying for. Standards are critical to farmers, producers, who compete with foreign imports, but more importantly to the health and safety of the consuming public. The Senate Subcommittee on Olive Oil Production and Emerging Products, this is just the first one we're going to do, which I chair with Senate under the leadership of Senator Cannella, is planning on several hearings to discuss these issues further. I ask for your aye vote. And when you're finished, I have to invite you somewhere, but I can't do that first.
Okay, witnesses in support?
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Engelhart. I'm the Vice President of California Olive Ranch. We are currently the largest grower as well as processor and marketer of olive oil in California. As Tom mentioned earlier, a couple minutes earlier, the industry is growing very rapidly, fueled mostly by a robust market in the U.S. and the suitability of olive cultivation in California. One of the things that is really a challenge for us as a growing emerging industry is the lack of a consistent, recognized, and enforced standard in the U.S. I think this bill is a very important step in making the standards consistent throughout the entire United States and moving towards a more enforceable and enforced standard, essentially leveling the playing field. As Senator Walk mentioned, right now, one of our largest challenges is competing against some of the subpar quality and the refined olive oils sold as extra virgin at a much lower price. So this was essentially just level that playing field for us. The growth rate in the industry has been incredible just in the last 3 years. As he mentioned, about 20,000 acres just really since about 2008, with significant growth yearly that will continue. So again, I would urge your support of this bill to amend this standard. Thank you.
Dan Flynn, Executive Director of the UC Davis Olive Center, here to respond to any technical questions.
Assemblymember Berryhill.
Yeah, can we move this bill to the consent calendar?
Without objection from the committee, we can move the bill to the consent calendar. I think we would need to use the motion and second to be able to do so. Is that correct? We can move this to the consent calendar.
Amendments to AB 618 without objection. 618 amendments can be adopted.
Okay. We can move this to the consent calendar. We do have amendments to SB 618, and without objection, we can adopt the amendments to SB 618. Okay, so we'll go ahead and use the motion and the second for the consent calendar. Your bill is being moved to the consent calendar. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
On the consent calendar, Galgiani.
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valdeo. Berryhill. Berryhill, aye. Hill. Ma. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Olson. Olson, aye. Perea. Perea, aye. Yamada.
Aye.
Yamada, aye.
Madam Chair, if I may say, I believe Mr. Berryhill's move just now is because it was something all of us could get around. Is that right? Sorry. I guess it's not as good as Amiano's jokes. Huh?
No.
This is a bill that all of us can get around. Okay. Sorry, took a couple of deliveries.
We're
was
a little slow
good.
after
That was
yesterday.
good.
All a little slow. May I, Madam Chair, invite you all to, now that you voted, invite you all to an olive oil tasting, sensory tasting seminar. Dan is going to lead it, and it will be in room 115 at 4 o'clock. We have several members coming, members of the staff, and anybody that you choose to invite, please do, and I hope you'll join us. It's very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sounds wonderful. Congratulations. Senator Rubio. Senate Bill 549, dealing with eggs and assessment fees.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members, thank you for allowing me to bring SB 549 to improve food safety and quality issues within the egg industry. This bill is sponsored by the Pacific Egg and Poultry Association as well as the California Grain and Feed Association, and this bill attempts to accomplish two things. First, it increases the assessment cap on the California Shell Egg Quality Program housed at the California Department of Food and Ag. Second, the bill expands the assessment to include egg products brought into this state. SB 549 will provide additional funding to improve the overall system, which has long been needed for a revamping since 1990, so 21 years. It's much overdue revamping of it, and this bill has received bipartisan support through the Senate, has no current opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Madam Chair, I move the bill.
We have a motion and a second. Please continue.
Dennis
Witnesses in
Albiani
support.
from the Pacific Egg and Poultry Association of California Grain and Feed. As the author stated, this bill is designed to help fund an expanded enforcement program for food safety, and that's what we found out during the Iowa egg recall last year. It decimates our industry when things go wrong. So we'll be able to track eggs better and facilitate when there are problems, but also prevent problems from occurring. For those reasons, we support this bill and request your aye vote.
Okay, do we have any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Do we have any questions from members or comments? Okay, we have a motion and second. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
SB 549, the motion is to pass. Galgiani.
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valdeo. Valdeo, aye. Bill Berryhill. Bill Berryhill, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Ma. Mendoza. Mendoza, I. Olson. Olson, I. Perea. Perea, I. Yamada. Yamada, I. Bill down.
Congratulations, your bill is out. And I've just been informed that Assemblymember Valadeo's family is here, so we would like to recognize them. His wife and 2 children, Tara, Connor, and Madeline. And they're here for the ice cream, I understand. And there's olive oil also later today. Enjoy. Okay. We're waiting for one more member, Senator Leno, on Senate Bill 676 dealing with industrial hemp.
When can I add on at the end?
You can come up now if you'd like.
So what are we waiting on? Just
Assemblymember Hill wanted to speak to the Senator Yi bill, Senate Bill 249.
I spoke with the senator. He had to leave the building. And he made a commitment to me that the bill, that's SB 249, would either be amended and brought back to this committee in the next week or so before the deadline, or it will die on the floor or be held on the floor. It will not move forward unless it's amended in that. And that's his commitment to me, and I'm willing to support him on that.
Well, I don't think that Madam Chair, I disagree. I don't think the bill should ever get to the floor the way it is, or even if it's amended, it needs to come back. So you're saying that it will be held on the floor. It will be. I don't think it even should even reach the floor. If that's what I'm saying. I'm not too sure what the value is of getting it out of the committee.
Okay.
If it's to get it out of the committee, you still have to come back. I mean, you still have to request a special hearing no matter what.
That's correct.
Whether we get it out or whether it stays here, a special meeting needs to be granted either way.
Yes, I believe Mr. Hill is declaring what his vote will be and the rationale why.
And why that I feel comfortable doing that as a courtesy to the senator to work on the bill there and then bring it back here
on the floor.
Or not to, well, he won't take this original bill to the floor, is what he told me.
Okay.
The bill that will pass today, if it passed today, would not go to the floor in the form that it's in. It would be he would bring it back after he amends it for a special.
Okay. And we're not asking for another motion on this bill. You're simply stating what your vote will be on the bill and the rationale why. Okay. Okay. So you're wanting your vote to be an aye vote.
Yes.
Okay.
As you lift the call.
Okay. Move the call. Will the secretary please call the roll for the absent members on this bill?
Can I get clarification, Madam Chair, from Mr. Hill?
Yes, the motion. We already had a motion, a second, and a vote. So he's changing his vote, and he wanted to share with the committee the fact that he's changing his vote and the rationale.
I just want to ask him a little bit about the conversation that he had with the senator.
Okay.
Yeah. So the senator said that he was not going to take this bill to the floor at all, and if it gets out of committee, he's going to amend it and bring it back.
Correct.
And it will not get to the floor as is.
Correct. That was his comment to me, his statement and commitment.
Okay. But that is if it passes. The bill is on call right now. How many votes does the bill have? How many votes? The bill has 3 aye votes, and that includes Mr. Hill's vote. That does not. So Mr. Hill's vote would give it 4. And we have how many no votes? 3. And 3 not voting. So that bill needs 2 more votes in order to pass this committee. And if it does, then the author's commitment would be honored.
To bring it back to the committee?
Yes. Yes. But we're not asking for any change. It's just your vote. So I see that Senator Leno is here to present his bill. And then what we'll do is when the other absent members are here at the end, we'll...
Did you lift the call on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Right now. So if you're going to make that change right now, well, I'll follow your lead, Mr. Hill, says this is your area, and I have concerns, obviously.
I understand,
but I don't want to see the bill go to the floor at all, as is, or if it's amended, it has to come back. So.
It has to come back, and it's my understanding if it doesn't go in that direction, we'll do something about it.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, I'll change. If you want to do the vote, I'll just go ahead and I'll follow his lead, and since that's his area,
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza.
I'll give you that courtesy.
Okay, Assemblymember Mendoza is adding on to that bill, and we'll go ahead and proceed with Senator Leno. Thank you for waiting, Senator.
I hate to interrupt the party.
And the U bill is back on call.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
committee members. It's a pleasure to be here. I have the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the subject of industrial hemp. First, I'll give you just a little bit of historical background, then I'll talk a little bit about the hemp plant itself, talk about the ever-growing industrial hemp market, and all of the potential benefits for the state of California. So, historically, Industrial hemp has benefited the planet Earth for literally millennia, has benefited this country for well over 150 years. The sails of the Nina Pinta Santa Maria were made from industrial hemp. Drafts of the Constitution were written on industrial hemp paper. Hemp was actually legal tender in the United States up until 1818, and in the original colonies, many were requiring farmers to reserve a portion of their fields to grow hemp. They were required to grow hemp. So hemp is a cannabis sativa L plant, which makes it a distant biological cousin to marijuana. That which significantly differentiates it from marijuana is the THC content, whereas in marijuana, THC content is traditionally somewhere between 5 and 15%. That's a psychoactive ingredient. In industrial hemp, by international definition, and the definition in our bill, it can have no more than 0.3% of 1% THC. Trace amounts. A good analogy would be it has about as much THC as the poppy seeds on your bagel have opium, just trace amounts. Because the fiber, the stalk, the oil, and the non-viable seed are already in federal law and state law exempted from the definition of marijuana, we currently legally make thousands of products from industrial hemp. We make food, clothing, shelter, paper, fuel. All of these products are biodegradable. Hemp is renewable every 90 days. It grows without herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. It's a great crop rotator because it leaves nutrients in the soil. And gets even better. It grows with less water than most of our crops here in California. Wonderful for a drought environment. So we make all of these thousands of products manufactured here in California, but we're leaving out the farmer of California. We import it from dozens of countries, from China, from South Africa, from Mexico, from Canada, but we have an ambiguity in law as to whether our farmers can grow it. The bill before you will clarify that it will be legal in California for farmers to grow industrial hemp. And we have limited the bill to a 5-county, 8-year pilot project. Kings, Kern, Imperial, San Joaquin, and Yolo counties. And it will require that the Attorney General report back to us after the first 6 years of the pilot to share with us any concerns that law enforcement, as you will hear, currently yet have, some parts of law enforcement, to see if any of their fears are actualized, and then also to have the Hemp Industry Association to report back as to what the economic benefits have been in the first years of the pilot program. You'll hear from us as to why we believe this can sustain any kind of federal scrutiny. We will make the argument that Congress knowingly exempted industrial hemp from the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 because hemp's not a drug. And so there's a court case that would substantiate that. And you'll also hear from our legal counsel that because we will not use any viable seed to get this project going, we've got a little bit of a chicken and egg here question, there is viable seed already in California. Ditchweed is industrial hemp. It grows wild, so there is access to viable seed within California, so no interstate commerce or interstate anything would trigger federal scrutiny of this. So we have a lot of support. I will save a letter from former Supervisor Tony Oliveira for my close. We have a resolution from the Imperial County Farm Bureau in support of the bill. I have personally spoken with the Sheriff of Kings and the Sheriff of Kern County, who have told me eyeball to eyeball that they get this, that they realize that there's little concern for the sheriff's law enforcement concerns. And you can imagine, as hemp went through a rough spot in the second half of the 20th century with all the concerns about marijuana, confusion with marijuana, some of our Western trading partners followed our lead in making it nearly impossible, if not illegal, to grow in our country. All of those countries have reversed course. So keep in mind that some of the concerns you will hear from the opposition, and it's a minimal opposition voice, all of these other countries have managed it. So I'll save for my close also my response to that. You can't tell the difference between the hemp and the marijuana plant. You can, and I'll tell you why later. That one would want to nefariously hide marijuana in a legal hemp field. That doesn't make sense. I'll get to that later, too. But thank you for your attention. And we have the president of the California Grange, who is in full support of the bill. And then we also have our legal counsel from the Hemp Industry Association, and we have our friends from labor here as well.
Thank you. Witnesses in support?
Yes, my name is Steve Levine, and I am the president of the Hemp Industries Association, which Senator Leno alluded to. It's a nonprofit industrial hemp organization focused on our membership, which consists of about 300 members, mostly companies, hemp companies, about half of which are from California. And the United States is the only country, the only industrialized country in the world that does not grow hemp while all the products from the plant are legal. They're legal and they are totally drug-free and have no potential for use as a recreational drug. SB 676 is about jobs. Number one, it is, as was also alluded to by Senator Leno, we're leaving the farmers out. But we're also leaving the manufacturers out and the retailers out and the people that are starting businesses for no reason. It is beyond me why we are still continuing to try to convince people that there's a problem. Besides the supporters that Senator Leno mentioned, we also are supported by the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. Imperial County, as you mentioned, and also the National Farmers Union, as well as this assembly body in 1999 passed a resolution endorsing industrial hemp. It's a wonderful plant that can be grown anywhere, and its passage would be the first big step to greening this industry. Hemp is already a part of the natural products industry, and the green industry that is growing in this state has already embraced hemp. And by passing SB 676, entrepreneurs and venture capitalists will feel free and comfortable in loaning money to companies and businesses to build an industry that the public is clamoring for. And so I would just like to say I endorse this bill, and I ask for your support.
Other witnesses?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob McFarland is the president of the California State Grange.
Good afternoon. I'm the president of the California State Grange. The California State Grange is the oldest agricultural organization in California. We have 185 chapters serving communities all across the state and 10,000 members. The Grange supports the legalization of industrial hemp as an income-producing opportunity for California farmers, as a means to create new off-farm processing jobs, and for its many beneficial uses to consumers. If George Washington were alive today, he would be arrested, because besides being the father of our country, the hero of the Revolutionary War, and our first president, George grew hemp. In early America, hemp was grown second only to tobacco as a useful and profitable crop. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence on paper made from hemp. Benjamin Franklin flew his famous electrified kite with a string attached made of hemp. The United States Department of Agriculture encouraged American farmers to grow hemp during World War II to provide uniforms for the Army and rope for the Navy. And although it has been used for 10,000 years by civilizations around the world to make everything from clothing to Bibles, in 2011, it is illegal to grow hemp in the United States. Ironically, it is not illegal to purchase and use items made from hemp. such as lotions, food, clothing, paper, building materials. These are produced and imported from 30 international industrial countries like France, China, and New Zealand. Hemp is a viable and profitable crop for them. Canadian farmers make $2.5 to $3 million a year legally growing industrial hemp. Why then is it illegal to grow it here? The Marijuana Act of 1937 intended to thwart the distribution and use of recreational cannabis, but it effectively prohibited all varieties of cannabis, including industrial hemp, which contains less than 1% of THC content, the active ingredient that produces the high from its very distant cousin. Opponents of the legalization of industrial hemp mistakenly fear it will be used as a recreational drug. It simply is not possible to get high smoking industrial hemp. Unfairly, California farmers and consumers must suffer the loss of this useful and profitable crop due to a case of mistaken identity. Industrial hemp is a resilient crop legally grown in 30 nations. Sales of hemp based on food and body care products are approaching $300 million annually in the United States. The California State Grange supports this bill because it will generate new revenue for farmers, new jobs in rural communities. This is a crop California farmers could be supplying to our own in-state industry, an industry that's expanding by 10% a year. So what does Canada know about industrial hemp that we don't? The United States is the primary importer of industrial hemp legally grown in Canada. Canadian hemp seeds exports increased 300% in 2007. In 2010, areas licensed for industrial hemp production in Canada increased by 94%. In 2010, the Canadian government announced an injection of $728,000 to help the hemp industry increase production and capacity to supply American markets. California farmers are missing out, and why should they? The Grange urges your support of this bill.
Madam Chair and members, Barry Broad on behalf of the United Food Commercial Workers and the Teamsters. I don't know, we're not confused about the difference between rubbing alcohol and the kind you drink. I don't understand. This is like this stupid irrationality left over from the drug thing, and it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is a low water usage crop. We're going to have to phase out a lot of high water crops in the Central Valley because we don't have enough water. We're going to have to shift to these kind of crops. It's just, I don't know, I can't even get why anyone would ever think, why we didn't do this years ago. It just it's a total irrational state policy. There's a market for this. Our farmers can grow it. Our people will wind up processing it, transporting it. It's jobs. We'll wind up exporting the stuff all over the world, making rope out of it, whatever. All the natural food people will love it, and God knows the people that smoke marijuana will probably want to wear it. But anyway, we urge an aye vote.
Mr. Broad, are you saying that while the Central Valley is going to pop, our farmers could be rolling in dough?
Something like that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Patrick Goggin. I'm legal counsel for the Hemp Industries Association and Vote Hemp. I'm here to answer any legal questions. Make no mistake, this bill is about jobs and revenues. We urge your aye support.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Ardale Harrison. I'm a farmer here in Sacramento. I passed out a couple of letters just explaining my position, and I truly do believe in hemp. I do believe that farmers will increase their revenue. I do believe that real estate will increase for the farmers who do have land. The only concern that I have is that, as a black farmer, but as a farmer, I see the bill moving forward, but I'm still being left out. We have Kern County, Kings County, Yolo County, all of the counties. However, each of these counties, where I live, I can actually throw a rock on the other side of the river, and I'm in Yolo County. I just happen to be in Sacramento County. So all of these fantastic things, once again, are going to happen. And as a farmer, we're already struggling, and we're going to move forward on an industry which I believe in, because 10 years ago, I purchased the name hemp.com. You know, so it was futuristic. But here, you know, I'm in the game, but out of the game. It's getting ready to move forward. And I'm for the bill with an amendment or some portion where my little parcel, 80 acres, you know, I don't have 100,000 acres, but I do have 80. You know, my granddaddy had 40 and a mule. I got 80 and a Deere, John Deere tractor. And I'm just looking to be part of this revolutionary evolving of this industry. I just don't want to be left out, and that's why I'm here, because I think that there's nobody speaking up, one, for Sacramento County, and moreover for the black farmer. Now, if we're talking about from San Joaquin County to Sacramento to Hood Franklin, and then from I-5 to the river, I'm for it because I'm there. But right now, this sounds good. We're going to create jobs. I'm already creating jobs because I'm into recycling, but this right here, I just feel that I needed to come and represent myself. I'd rather be down here than on the tractor, really. It seems so much more fun. But I really, I just want to be included on this movement. I do not want to be left out. Right now, I grow alfalfa, and it doesn't pay the rent or the mortgage, you know, but hemp will. I'm a real estate broker and a contractor, and we know the last 5 years, everything has just taken a dive. So we've had to regroup. But I just think that the prices of real estate is going to skyrocket in Yolo, San Joaquin, Kings, Kern, and all of the other counties. And Sacramento, again, is going to be left out. Sacramento also needs revenue, jobs, and everything else. So here, I think that, you know, even if it's a pilot program, I grant you, I just want to be, you know, the co-pilot. Let me ride along with you and be part of this great industry, you know, and make some things happen. So the history is given, and historians say that if it wasn't for hemp, we might have lost World War II. So it's something to really think about, you know, and I'm here to state my position as a farmer. I'm here to state my position as a black farmer, and I just don't want to be left out again.
Your point is well taken. I think perhaps Mr. Leno has an idea for a bill next year once he can speak with stakeholders, the county, the city officials in Sacramento, and have their support and blessing for placing Sacramento County into another pilot program. Others in support of the bill, and I would please just ask that you come forward and state your name and the organization you represent. Witnesses in opposition?
Give him some room. Thanks, Bob. We're going to take this on the road.
Yeah, I feel a little strange following this kind of hemp infomercial, and I now know that the streets will be paved with gold and that hemp defeated Adolf Hitler. That's all news to me. Law enforcement, the groups California Police Chiefs Association, California Narcotic Officers Association, California Peace Officers Association, Association for LA County Deputy Sheriffs, and the Riverside Sheriffs Association all oppose this bill. First of all, despite everything you have heard today, the cultivation of hemp is illegal in the United States, and passage of a law in California is not going to cause 1 acre to be cultivated. Your analysis, which is very good, points out the other states who have legalized hemp. You won't find a stalk of hemp growing in any of those other states. Senator Leno, will talk about a court case which is actually distinguishable on its facts and does not, by operation of any judicial ruling, legalize the cultivation of hemp in this country. And if it were otherwise, you wouldn't have a bill by Congressman Mark Paul to legalize hemp. Congressman Ron Paul. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ron Paul. I appreciate that. To legalize hemp. Hemp is illegal for a very good reason. It is visually undistinguishable from marijuana. I provided to your chief counsel 2 pads, which I'd ask him to just pass around. Counsel, I'm sorry. Okay. 2 pads, which I'd ask him to pass around to the committee members. They are pictures of hemp and pictures of marijuana. And I think you will see that you cannot tell the difference. And there are 2 levels of law enforcement concern. One is that that hemp can be used, same-sex plants, so you don't have a cross-pollination issue, can be used as a shield around illegal marijuana grows and would undermine our enforcement efforts. Secondly, now when we see a grow of marijuana, we seize it, we make the necessary arrests. Once you put hemp into the fields, we will be required every time to do THC testing of those plants. Now, the task for enforcement against major cultivations is going to be daunting, particularly daunting given the actions this legislature took last night with the budget, which wiped out all 51 of the Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement task forces that did a lot of this work. So this is going to devolve to locals who don't even have the expertise that the state has. One other issue, I want to talk about the economics of hemp, because you have heard, this infomercialese about hemp's value. That's overstated. There's a economic study at the University of Kentucky, one of the few that was not paid for by the hemp industry, that concluded that at best hemp was a niche market. As for the cultivation of hemp all over the world is only successful when it's subsidized. Canadian hemp cultivation, subsidized. Chinese hemp cultivation, subsidized. In the European Union, hemp cultivation used to be subsidized. They stopped the subsidies several years ago, and the acreage of hemp dropped in half. So you have law enforcement issues that we think are now going to be very daunting, particularly given what was done last night with the budget. This is going to make what are difficult tasks anyway even more difficult. We would respectfully ask that this bill be held in committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Do we have any questions from members? Mr. Perea?
Sure, Senator. Just a couple of quick questions. First off, I was just reading the analysis. How did you choose which counties were going to participate in the pilot program? Or how was it chosen?
We were looking for geographically and in other ways diverse counties and parts of the state. So
I'm trying to turn this off. I don't know how it's happened. I apologize.
Up at the top. Yeah.
Pretty cool, man. I like that.
You take it. They're my favorite group.
Yeah.
Mr. Lovell, you could just leave.
Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah. So with Imperial County, we could check, see how the production would proceed in a desert climate in Kings and Kern, more Central Valley, San Joaquin, a little more coastal, Yolo a little bit further north. Also, we were looking for parts of the state which we had indications would be welcoming as well. And I know that we'll be talking about Yolo County in just a moment, which I'm happy to do. So we wanted to test different parts of the state.
Sure. And if you can bring up Yolo, because I was informed by my staff that Yolo now wants to opt out of the program.
Well, that's very curious. Yolo has been a part of the bill now for at least 3 months. We heard nothing until today.
Do you know why? What the...
You know, when Assemblywoman Yamato was chair of the Yolo County Board of Supervisors, she will tell you she authored a resolution which passed 4-1 in support of an earlier version of this bill that I jointly authored with Assemblyman Chuck DeVore when we got it to the governor's desk some years ago. So there are new membership on the board. I couldn't tell from the letter if the board actually cast a vote, and we went online to see if they had. So I don't know if this is just the opinion of the current chair, or it asks as many questions as it answers. But I'm happy if YOLO is officially or in any other way significantly disinterested in this, and that was important to the committee, I would back off of YOLO. It looks like Sacramento has some growing interest. Again, we want to conduct this pilot project where there is support.
Thank you, Assemblymember Yamada.
Actually, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I apologize.
I had a few more. Just a couple quick others. You mentioned that the Kings County and Kern County sheriffs support this. Did they submit letters?
I don't have letters from them right now, but I can tell you when the sheriffs were in town for their annual convention about a month ago, I had conversations with each of them, and they said they got it, they understood it, and they had some of their own internal politics to be dealing with. I haven't heard otherwise, but we're still trying to get those letters in our hand.
Okay, and just my last question.
And the State Sheriff's Association has always been neutral on this bill from day one 7 years ago to the current day.
So it'll be, number one, it'll be important for me to know where the Kings and Kern County sheriffs are. I haven't reached out to them. They haven't reached out to my office, so I'd be interested in figuring out where they are. So, at this point, I know my staff is trying to chase them down to see where they are, but I'm not ready to commit one way or the other at this point because their opinion will be important to me because I want to make sure that, number one, they're supportive, but number two, their thoughts on implementing. Are there going to be any implementation issues, as was mentioned by the opposition, and which will get me to my last question, is the opposition stated that cultivating hemp in the U.S. is illegal. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, and this does reflect upon the confusion both in federal and state law, both relative to the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, as well as a court case where the Drug Enforcement Agency under George W. Bush had destroyed some tons of snack food. Popcorn and pretzels were destroyed because they had legally been made with hemp seed oil. And the manufacturers of these legal products said, enough is enough, this is our livelihood, you've crossed a line in the sand, DEA. And so they cobbled together their private dollars to sue the DEA, and they prevailed. Now, Mr. Lovell and I have a difference of opinion exactly what the ruling was, but they prevailed, and the ruling was that DEA did not have that authority to overrule what was a legal product and what was not. We also believe that they recognized that Congress had exempted industrial hemp from the Controlled Substances Act because it is not a drug by anyone's definition. That notwithstanding, let me pass it to Patrick Goggin, who is our legal counsel, who will talk to you about why this does not interfere with federal law, because we will not be crossing any state line.
Yeah. The question is whether or not this bill is federally preempted. And a California Court of Appeal recently ruled in the case of Qualified Patients v. City of Anaheim that Proposition 215, the Medical Cannabis Act, could coexist with federal law because there was no positive conflict as well as there was no obstacle preemption. That doesn't mean that the federal government, as far as medical cannabis is concerned, can't enforce the law. But what the court said is they can coexist. The same situation would occur here, except we also have added in the component that the viable seed must come from within the state. Therefore, the only items that get into or affect interstate commerce are those parts of the plant that have been exempted, the sterilized seed, the fiber, and the oil. There is no national market for viable hemp seed. Therefore, the Commerce Clause is not implicated, and the federal government cannot interfere.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Perea?
Yeah.
Okay, Assemblymember Yamada?
Madam Chair, first let me speak to the bill as written. I do support the bill and will be supporting it. In fact, would move the bill now.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second on the bill? We have a motion and a second.
I do want to be very respectful of John Lovell because we actually worked together in L.A. County when, I earlier referenced when we started in this wonderful political endeavor of ours. We both worked for the same member of the Board of Supervisors. So have great respect and appreciation for his point of view. But speaking to the situation with respect to Yolo County that I now represent here, when I was the chair of the Board of Supervisors in Yolo County, I do have a copy of the July 31st, 2007 letter written to then Assemblymember Leno and Assemblymember DeVore supporting our inclusion as a county at that time in the pilot program. This was brought, to the full board, and I think was a 4-1 vote. I do have a letter from current board chair Matt Rexroad that is asking for YOLO to be removed from the pilot program. Now, I guess I could make a joke about what the difference is when there's a Democratic chair of the board and a Republican chair of the board, but no. Matt
this is a bipartisan bill. This is a bipartisan bill.
But Supervisor Rexroad and I actually served as the Ledge Subcommittee of the Board of Supervisors, and so we also have great respect for one another. So what I would say is in consulting with the chair as well as the other member of the current Ledge Subcommittee, Supervisor Jim Provenza, who is also known to us in other life here, their legislative subcommittee did agree to send this letter, and I did confirm that they're intending to go to the full board at their earliest convenience. I think it's July 14th is their next board meeting. So, out of respect to the current board, even though this was a very last-minute notification, I think this morning or yesterday afternoon, something like that, out of respect to their board process, I would be suggesting that, we respect their right to remove themselves. I think that it really speaks to, in fact, if I can just read, may I permission to read, Madam Chair? Well, just permission to read very quickly one line from this.
Okay, very quickly.
Thank you. Mr. Rexroad, Chair Rexroad says, quote, "We recognize that this represents a change from our 2007 position, but ask that you amend the bill at your earliest convenience, largely because of the expense of monitoring." And if I may just, Yolo County being 58 out of 58 counties in percentage of property tax retained, it's only about 8.7 cents on the dollar that Yolo County retains property tax revenue, and is also over 2/3 in Williamson, which is also a huge hit. So I think it may be less a matter of their willingness and intent to support, this crop, as it is that, they're just completely broke now. So with that understanding, now I don't know how the author feels or how the committee chair feels.
A commitment from the author that if the county formally requests to be removed from the bill, that an amendment can be taken on the floor to amend Yolo County out of the bill?
Yes, you have that commitment.
Okay.
But in the meantime, Sacramento might want to join.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. That's
Assemblymember Berryhill.
Yeah, it's for rope, not dope. And you know what? I look at this and I see a huge distinction between a 16-foot plant versus what's typical marijuana, up to 6 foot. I mean, I see a very clear distinction. It looks like it's planted like corn. It's subsidized everywhere where it's grown. Well, it's not going to get subsidized here, so if that's the case, I guess they won't grow it. We're not stupid in farming. We're going to grow it if we can make a buck at it. And I think coming from the Central Valley, when we're looking at 18% unemployment, the opportunity that may exist with this, with manufacturing, and so forth, you know what? I got to embrace this, and so I'll be supporting this today, and we'll see where it goes from
That's
there.
great, Mr. Bailey. Thank you very much.
We have a motion and a second. Unless we have any other questions from members, will the secretary please call the roll?
Could I briefly close?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to keep you much longer. I just wanted to take a moment to respond to some of Mr. Lovell's comments. So Mr. Berryhill is correct. Anyone with the gift of sight could immediately distinguish between the two fields. Marijuana is planted in rows 4 feet apart because the plant needs to grow broadly so that it can flower, and grows usually no more than 10, maximum 12 feet. But industrial hemp is planted very densely in rows 6 inches apart and looks like a field of bamboo and can grow to 16 to 20 feet tall and doesn't have broad leaves because it's not grown for that purpose. So anyone can tell the difference. There is concern for cross-pollination. That's why a marijuana farmer wants to stay away from industrial hemp, because hemp is nature's marijuana eradicator. It would lower the THC content, making it useless, increase the THC content of the industrial hemp from the marijuana, making it illegal. So they want to stay far away from each other as possible. To Mr. Perea, and then I'll just finish up for you.
Okay.
That my experience in the legislature has been that if there is any kind of interest group which is opposed to something that we may be voting on, you don't have to track them down. They know you, and they know where to find you, and they will let you know that they are against something and they don't want you to vote for it. So if you haven't heard from them, it's not a high priority for them. And then lastly, again, Mr. Berryhill was accurate in that if there's no viable market for this, no harm, no foul. The other states that have passed laws required a DEA waiver, and they've never gotten it, and that's why there's no hemp production in those states. We are not requiring us to have. And we do have law enforcement protections in it. We require that before there can be harvesting of a field, that the farmer, at his or her expense, must go to a federal DEA registered laboratory to get documentation that the THC content is below 0.3%. If it's greater than, the field cannot be harvested, that documentation must be kept at all times for 2 years, that they also have to register the size of their acreage and their GPS location. This is so everything's above board. Any of the flowering tops is the only part of the plant that has no viable economic interest, will be deemed to be marijuana for law enforcement purposes, so there's no confusion. No one could say, oh, that's hemp. If it's a top, it's considered marijuana.
Thank
I ask
you.
for your aye vote. Thank you. You've been very
Will
gracious.
the secretary please call the roll?
SB 676, the motion is due past to appropriations. Galgiani.
Aye.
Galgiani, aye. Valdeo. Bill Berryhill. Bill Berryhill, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Ma. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Olson. Perea. Yamada. Yamada, aye.
Congratulations, that bill is out.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
We have one item on call, which is
On SB 249, lifting the call, I'm calling the absentees. Bill Berryhill.
just a moment, please. This is on Senator Yee's bill, SB 249. We're lifting the call.
Bill Berryhill. Bill Berryhill, aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Mendoza. Yamada. 5 is out.
That bill is out. This meeting is adjourned.